Hey guys, this is the Different Animals podcast. This is Tyler,
And I'm Ever Castro.
and we've had some stuff going on, across the country, and also in smaller segments in each individual area. So we decided we would touch base on that. I didn't want to ignore it. I know that um, Ever talked to me about it before this, but we're not really a super affected demographic, I guess is what I'll say. I'm white, so I don't have, I don't have the same problems or the fear of police.
I'm Mexican, um, but sort of to kind of give people a background on how this is recorded, just to give them a behind the scenes or how how the sausage is made. So we usually record on a weekend, and then we give it about a week and a half, maybe two, before we post that episode, and that allows Tyler to edit it and put it together. Just because we're just getting started, and we definitely don't want to do like normal podcasts do, which is they'll record on a Wednesday and they'll have it out by Friday. And maybe
Right.
eventually we'll get there, but right now we're just getting started. So that's why the episodes are released the way that they are. And so for this one, I definitely well, a I I did, like I said when we first started this podcast, I wanted to get people's mind off of stuff, because we have the quarantine and coronavirus, and I want to be talk about stuff that people can just listen to and relax and not have to stress about, what we're talking about.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
then
This was designed, created to be an entertainment type of podcast.
exactly, yeah. But then as I was thinking about today, because we were going to record, so you'll hear this on Thursday the 4th, and recording this on the 1st on Monday. And so this is the fastest turnaround we probably will ever have, just the way that we record. And so
Right.
I definitely wanted to get it out, and I'm sure by Thursday it might be a completely different world or whatever. But I didn't want to. I felt like something that is this big and seems to be affecting everybody and changing. I mean, we have a curfew here in Raleigh at 8, and they're going to keep doing it every day until the mayor says no. So who knows how long that'll last. And we can go
Right.
into this in a little bit, but I just wanted to explain to people like sort of why we're talking about this early on and why it's sort of taped off from the rest of the conversation that they'll hear after this.
Right. So I originally had concerns about episode three's audio quality. I think I've saved it more than I thought I was going to be able to. So we're going to release two episodes. But I figured this is something we should talk about. So I'm just going to throw this in the beginning of episode three that you're currently listening to. Um, and once we're done talking about this, you're going to hear the rest of the episode pick up like nothing had happened because that was recorded 2 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
right, yeah. Yeah, and it'll be different. It'll be like, well, these guys don't really, they're not really mentioning anything, and they're kind of so that's what we wanted to avoid. We didn't want to just release it straight up and be like, oh, well, like these guys didn't even mention it at all. So I definitely wanted to talk about it. What I didn't want to do, or that I was sort of hesitant to do, is just to be on here and be like, well, here's what's going on, here's what we think about it, which I think is important. But I think the moment belongs to other people who have been set aside for so long that at this point, it's most important that we listen to Black people who have, been dealing with this their whole lives or who are dealing with the situation right now. And the best thing we can do right now is just be a good ally and listen and help where you can. I know I talked to a couple friends today who, they said, well, I've given money, but I don't feel like that's enough. And like, and they were, I'll go into the Raleigh protest in a little bit, but they were like, I don't just want to do that. I want to do something with my time. I want to do something with my body. And it's definitely not the same as it was, before quarantine. Before quarantine, you could go out, do whatever, but now you have to be more hesitant about that. You have to be sort of aware of that and, the police presence or in whatever city you're at. And so I told them, just donate where you can, see where you can volunteer, donate to bail funds, donate to organizations that are, doing the work on the ground, and just do what you can to help out. If you can't, be there, talk to people, talk to friends, talk to family, talk to especially parents, explain to them sort of what's going on. Read up. Like I said, the best thing you can do right now is just listen and fit in where you can and be the ally you can be if you're white and if you're black. Know that we're here, know that we're listening, and know that hopefully things will change, and it won't be easy, and it'll be for a while. It'll be difficult for a while, but it'll hopefully
Yeah,
something will happen.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, it just doesn't feel right coming from my mouth, but like realistically, I mean, the black community has unfortunately had to fight extremely hard for anything throughout history. You know what I mean?
Right.
As much as MLK is trotted out in front of everyone, um, by everybody as this patron saint of activism. Um, it's not really brought up. You know what I mean? Or at least it's not well known or well accepted that at the time of his death, he and the years leading up to it, he was considered one of the most hated men in America. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Right.
especially even if you take aside like the civil rights part of it, I mean, like we're talking about civil rights, which we do, I feel like generally agree with, that equal rights is important. But we're also talking about like the Vietnam War, which everyone has now come to accept was a mistake, and he was saying it was a mistake at the time, and people hated him for it.
Right.
So as much as it's awful coming from my mouth, it has historically been a struggle for a community that it shouldn't need to be. But
Right. Right.
you know, I'm with the community as much as I can. You know what I mean? Any way I can help, I can.
Right.
I mean, I live in a small town. There was like a very small protest in my town.
Mm-hmm.
They blocked off one of our uh, bigger streets, I guess I'll say. Um, but even in this small town, there's images floating around. There were guys in a truck with rifles riding around,
Right. Protect.
supposedly trying to protect businesses, but very
Right.
obviously trying to intimidate people. So
Exactly. Yeah.
just stay safe. Um, as much as you can, because it's not like police make it easy. They actively go out of their way to make it more difficult, but try and stay safe.
Yeah. Here in Raleigh, um, I was in Chapel Hill on Friday, and I came back on Saturday. And my girlfriend and I, we drove by downtown, and we saw like in the distance some police cop cars like with their lights on, sort of like far away. And I figured that it was kind of, I don't know, like nothing had happened, and so we just went home. And then later that night, I saw on Twitter, people had been protesting throughout the day, and it was mostly, I mean, it was peaceful. Everything that I saw looked like every other event that I've been to downtown. Just people with posters, people walking, kids, people with their babies, everybody wearing masks, everybody being safe about that. Trying to be as socially distant as you can in a protest, and
Right.
then from what I saw, then it just flipped the switch and it flicked, and then the cops showed up in riot gear, and they started shooting tear gas, and that's when everybody started breaking windows. But then to this, right today, Monday, we don't know if people, the people that started breaking windows were people who were part of the protest or they were just agitators.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's one thing that seems to be
yeah,
kind of across the board for whatever information you could find is that it seems like a lot. First of all, it seems that most of the people vandalizing stuff are white,
right.
um,
Yes.
and you really only have two options to interpret that, in my opinion, which is that there's the ignorance is bliss interpretation, which is this that um, white people don't have the same experience with police officers as black people. And so maybe they don't quite grasp the seriousness and danger being put into the crowd, like the amount of danger they put the crowd into when they
Right.
do something like that because they've never had that experience.
Right.
The other example, which seems to be the case most of the times, is that you have outside people coming in doing it to undermine the protest, which is unfortunate and 100% intentional.
Right.
There's that video, one of the very first videos about it was the guy in Minneapolis that burned down the AutoZone, who they immediately recognized was a cop. Um, and as far as I can tell, has been outed to be a cop.
Right.
That's very clearly just
Mm.
trying to agitate things so they can undermine the message.
Yeah, and it's hard because that first initial night in Minneapolis, there were protests and the riots and stuff, and people broke stuff, but it's this weird line where you go, yeah, they broke stuff, but it makes sense, right? You can only push down on people before they you know
Exactly.
break back and or like attack, push back, right? So it's this weird sort of mix where it's like the agitators shouldn't riot, but if you have honest anger, if you have true anger, then I look at it like it's not. I don't know. I don't want to say justified because I'm not the person to say it's not justified. It's not justified. But I feel like
Right.
in my eyes, I go, well, yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Like
That's my
like
whole thing
in
is I don't give a shit.
yeah.
Like the best example I can come up with, and it's a perfect example because I feel like it fits the analogy, and also everyone understands that this policy is horseshit. So I think it works, which is that if you're a kid in school, right, and this bully walks up to you and shoves you into the locker, right, you don't do anything because you're like, I'm not supposed to fight. So next day shoves you in the locker. Next day shoves you in the locker. You then start to tell teachers like, "Hey, this dickhead shoving me in lockers," and you know what I mean. Like this isn't cool. I like something needs to be done, right?
Right.
And the teacher's like, "Yeah, that's awful," and nothing happens. And then happens again, happens again. You tell the teacher again. Teacher's like, "Quit complaining. There's no real problem. He's not actually shoving you into lockers." And you're like, "No, he is." Um, so then shoves you a couple more times. Then the kid gets in a fight, right? The kid swings on the guy that's shoving him in lockers. Now,
Mm-hmm.
everyone by the book is going to tell you, like, you can't have fights in school. That's the rule. Both of you get suspended. But everyone knows that at some point, when you don't listen or help the kid that's getting abused, he's going to swing on the person that's abusing him. You know
Right.
what I
The
mean?
bullet. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're getting that same exact analogy here, which is that police, by and large, have been murdering unarmed African Americans, men, women, just in general, with no repercussions, no convictions. Um, you know, half the time it's paid leave. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so at some point, we've had a protester. We had Kaepernick kneel in the NFL, and the president of America came out and called him a son of a bitch. So you can't argue that we need more peaceful protests because every time there's been a peaceful protest, there has just been people to dismiss it.
Right.
It was Black Lives Matter, and then it was Blue Lives Matter, and then All Lives Matter, and then it was Kaepernick kneeling, and then it was the NFL is a shame, and now Kaepernick doesn't have a job. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
every turn, they've tried to tell us, they've let us know that this is a problem, and largely as a country, we have ignored it, and now people get pissed and they break shit. And as much as we all understand that you don't fight in school, or in this case, don't break shit, that at some point something has to be done.
Right. Yeah. Especially. Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah. So we yeah. Like you said it perfectly. And so I don't know. We just like I texted Tyler before the recording, and I was like, we should say something, and I don't know. Going forward, I mean, so much has happened since last Monday, and that was what 6 days, 7 days ago. So when you hear this in three, things might be very different. I would just look at how much stuff changed over the weekend. So yeah, so yeah, just reach out to people, talk to them, reach out to Black people, talk to them, listen to them, and help where you can. Whether it's calling, donating money, volunteering stuff, moving, taking water down to protesters, whatever you think you can help with, or whatever um, you can do. Please do it. I know posting is that's helpful. Spreading the word. Talk to people. Talk to family. Talk to people who maybe they aren't aware of it somehow. Like people who just like, oh yeah, there's some stuff going on. Talk to them and say, no, like this is important. This is big stuff. Like this is history book level stuff, right? So, you know,
Yeah,
um,
and I mean, if there's, I mean, there are going to be people who don't see it. You know what I mean? That as much as you can
right,
point it out, it's always a few bad apples. You know what I mean? Like it's all it ever is somehow. And it's as much as those people. aren't going to agree with it, I mean, there's always the chance that maybe someone legitimately just doesn't get it. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you have to antagonize everyone that doesn't agree with you, because the thing is that most of these people, I think, that don't agree with the statement at this point are kind of willfully ignorant. Um, they're choosing to not understand what you're saying. But if you ever get the sense that someone is legitimately not understand, you know what I mean? Like, feel free to explain it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't think they're just blatantly ignoring it, I mean,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, that's one of the only things that maybe I as a white person or you as a Mexican person can help with, aside from like you said, the actual action. As far as just communicating, I mean, like, if there's family members that you think just don't care, you know what I mean? It's not that they disagree with it, they just don't care. You know what I mean? This could be your chance to like, explain why this is a big deal.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So yeah, we hope you enjoy, episode 3. We just wanted to, not talk about it, right? We wanted to make sure to get out there and who knows how this is going to change. Maybe, we might have to do another one of these next week because something drastically has changed or something. So,
Right.
I mean, I hope not. I hope, things get better and I don't know, or something happens. But see, even me saying to hope things get better, that maybe that's just me going like, well, I hope things get back to the way things were. But it's like, is it? Like, are they? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
I guess
um,
it's not. I had friends, bring up the fact that he got arrested and he is charged with like third-degree murder. I'm like, look, it's progress, but it's not. You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
not what progress is. This, in my opinion, progress is only progress when it's made in good faith. And this very obviously, to me, felt like something being done to just try and appease the people while
yeah.
also not going too hard on the police officer. So obviously, we hope things get better, but not at the cost of actual progress. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. I mean, that reminds me of that, the Malcolm X quote where he's talking about the knife in the back. He's like, people, will stab you in the back and they'll go in 9 inches and they'll take it out 3 and they'll say, well, that's progress. And then they'll take
Right.
it out all the way and it's like, oh, there's even more progress. But that isn't progress,
Right. You stabbed
because
me.
yeah, exactly. Real progress is the healing. But these days there's people who, don't even want to acknowledge that there's a knife in your back at all.
Right.
Um, and so, but yeah,
And one thing, I know I already kind of like brought up the MLK thing, but one thing I will say is that, like, MLK understood why people rioted. You know what I mean? There's been the quote that's been shared around where just riots are the voice of the unheard. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
And he didn't condone it. He never came out and said, like, go riot. But he never acted like it was some appalling, unbelievable thing. And
Because I
and
mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
and truthfully, I think if you look at history, and I don't think there's any way for MLK to have achieved the things he did without Malcolm X being the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it seems very much like, as we've seen, the government, white America, don't generally care about the protest until we have a different problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that kind of pushed at the time. You know what I mean? I think Malcolm X kind of pushed it. The answer is, you either ignore MLK, but like, if you listen to what he's saying and make action, then maybe you can calm the separate group down. Which is realistically at this point kind of, I feel like, what you got to hope the riots achieve in some manner, which is that, like, action needs to be taken or shit's gonna get worse.
Right. Right. Anyway, on that note, do you feel good? What do you
Yeah,
think? Yeah.
yeah. I mean that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
so. Just to sum it all up, take whatever action you can,
Yeah.
help wherever you can, donate wherever you can,
Yeah. And
spread
listen to
spread the word
people.
and spread time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, the rest of episode 3 is coming up.
Yeah. Enjoy, guys, and like we said before, like, subscribe, and let us know what we can do. Let us know, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get your mind off of stuff for a little bit.
Absolutely. Hey, and this one's extra long, so maybe that's just what you needed. Hey guys, welcome to the Different Animals Podcast. This is your boy Tyler.
Hey, what's up? And this is Ever Castro.
And today, on episode 3, we are going to be touching on very attractive celebrities, punching a 53-year-old man, and, and possibly touching on some Nicolas Cage and some Little Dicky. But before that, I'm gonna play this intro. All right, so the first thing we should talk about here is a tweet that I saw you respond to, which is that someone said, "Find me a more attractive on-screen couple than Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie in Mr. and Mrs. Smith."
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think I immediately said Daniel Craig and Ava Green in Casino Royale, and then who else? I said Brandon Fraser and Rachel Weisz in The Mummy, and one more that I can't remember off the top of my head from that tweet. But yeah, I mean that is a very high bar to clear. I think I mean that is peak Angelina Jolie, and I guess Brad Pitt as well. But yeah, Casino Royale is one of my all-time favorites, so I always go to that one for whenever I think about, when somebody looks best on screen. I always think about those two.
Yeah, Daniel Craig has a face that should absolutely not be attractive, and and I will admit that it still is, and I don't
Yeah,
understand.
it's like this, like sort of like Celtic, like scrunchy, like punched out face. It's like I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, yeah, it is very hard to explain. But like, I think if you put his face on anybody else with less charisma and a worse body, you're like, that dude just looks like a regular guy at a fucking grocery store.
Yeah, he looks
But
like a
like somehow it
character.
all
Yeah,
works for him. Yeah.
yeah, it lines up. Yeah.
Mine was Denzel Washington and Eva Mendes, and my first thought was in Training Day, but when I googled it, apparently there's another movie they're in that I haven't seen. I can't remember
Isn't it
the
like
name of it now.
Out of Sight or like Out of Time? No, the time one is the different one.
Right, that's a
That was
different
Paula
one.
Patton, I think. And
Yeah.
then this one, I forget which other one. It's like one of the crime ones that he made that wasn't very good.
Yeah, but either way, I was like,
Yeah.
they're both super attractive.
Or
And
I think, and then I think I told you I was like, or Eva Mendes and Will Smith in Hitch, or
right,
Eva Mendes and Ryan Gosling in The Place Beyond the Pines, or Eva
right.
Mendes and so basically
Eva Mendes put this couple on her back though.
exactly.
Oh
She
boy.
she managed to find a good niche for herself.
And then Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek in Desperado.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. The Antonio Banderas accent just really tops that one off. I know a lot of dudes that are like unwilling to admit that like celebrities are attractive. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're just too worried about it, and I'm just like, nah, dog. I
mean, that's the
would
point.
fuck Antonio Banderas if he walked up to me.
Yeah. People are like, oh my gosh, like these people, celebrities, they, we like they're attractive for a reason, like or like they're in movies for a reason because they're attractive, like
Right.
some people.
Unless they're in a comedy, they're not gonna look like a fucking bridge troll.
And I was like, yeah, exactly. I was literally just gonna say, I was like, unless you're Seth Rogen and you crack the case, and you get to be in movies with or Adam Sandler where you get to be with like Jennifer Aniston like 3 movies in a row and it's believable. Like usually you're pretty good looking for a reason. It's just kind of like um, I think I've mentioned this before. I find kind of like ideas of storytelling very, very interesting, and part of that storytelling, or the reason that it's like wired into our brains like from birth, is because it's like myth making. It helps us make sense of the world. And
Right.
so it's easier for us to digest stuff if it's good looking people because we are attracted to them regardless of whether they are a man or a woman. It just helps us stick, right? So if we put ugly Joe Schmo and his female equivalent in a romantic comedy, it's not going to click as well because it's just not going to stick in our brains like it would be if it was Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt.
Exactly. So if you had to just say who you think is the most attractive male celebrity, who are you going with? Because
Currently
I have my
or
answer.
ever.
Yeah, currently, and I have my answer right off the top.
Tiny, wiry Timothy Chalamet. I'm just kidding. No, no.
I really
No,
like to break them in half.
I'd probably say Oscar Isaac. I think Oscar Isaac. I think he's very charismatic, and he's good looking. I think he's
What
probably
movies has he been in? Because I can't put a face to the name now, but I'm sure I've seen him.
he was in the Star Wars movies. He's Poe. He was in Ex Machina.
Okay, I know who you're talking about. So mine is Idris Elba. Idris Elba absolutely should have
Oh
been the first of all should have been the next Bond. That would have been the most perfect fit, I think.
mm-hmm.
But I'd fuck Idris Elba. He'd fuck me in half. It'd be all right. And like, I have no problem saying that. That man looks like a god to me.
And yeah, it sucks that I don't know their ages like right as we speak, but I know Daniel Craig he's 50 something, and I don't think Idris Elba is that much younger than him. I think it's like not that far apart. He's 47, and Daniel Craig is 52. So
Damn,
they're
only
only
5
5
years.
years apart. So it sucks. Yeah. So it's like one of those things. It's like, yeah, this is Daniel Craig's last movie, but then by the time he's done, he's like as and then if Idris Elba does become Bond, he's gonna be as old starting as Daniel Craig was when he made his last movie. So it's like,
Yeah,
ugh.
but
But
then I,
but
I don't
like
think I
Roger
don't think
Moore was
Idris Elba looks as old as Daniel Craig does, though.
yeah.
I think if
No,
you
that's
clean
true.
shave
That's
him,
true.
I think
And I
he'd
mean,
be fine.
yeah, and I mean Roger Moore in the 80s, or in the 80s and 70s, he was making Bond movies and he was old as shit. Like he was like old. He was like an old man by the time he's
He's an
done.
old
So
ass motherfucker.
he was old, dude.
Shout out to ageism.
Yeah, but it's like
Yeah, no, I
so
get it.
if you saw Captain Marvel, they de-aged Samuel L. Jackson, right? And
Right,
so it works when he's talking to Brie Larson. He looks just like he does in the 90s. But then you see him run, and you can clearly tell that it's an old man, just
right.
in the way that his body moves. It's like that. It's like, yeah, you can have Idris Elba, and he can look good in a suit, but the moment he starts to run, you're like, get that man an AARP card.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. That's it's like that scene in The Irishman. I still haven't seen The Irishman
Yes,
because it's
yes, when
such a
he's
daunting thing. But like, I've seen the scene where Robert De Niro has to kick someone, and that shit is the most stiff, bro.
It's I think it was Dragonfly Jones on Twitter said that it looks like a fight from the puppets in Team America World Police.
That's perfect. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
It just makes no sense. It's like, why didn't they get like a 30-year-old and just put his face over him?
Right. There's no
He's
way you
supposed
couldn't
to
have got Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I mean? Like, you've already done a million fucking movies with the dude. Just
put a stunt actor in there who's 30,
right.
who's like about the same build, and then just put his face over him. If it's easy enough to put a fake face over old Robert De Niro, then just put a fake Robert De Niro face on a stunt man. I haven't seen the
Yeah,
movie, so
they did
don't.
that. They did that in Wolverine, I think. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
watching
yeah,
a
yeah.
CGI React video by I think it was like Corridor Crew on YouTube, and they talk about when he's is it
In
Logan?
Logan, yeah, in
Logan
Logan, yeah.
when he walks down the steps and he like looks at himself. That's a
Hmm.
stunt double, but they fucking did it perfectly, so it
Yeah, that's
looks
how they
just
did
like Hugh
the.
Jackman. They should have done that to De Niro. You're right.
That's how they did the Winklevoss twins in The Social Network. Because one is
Yeah.
Army Hammer, and the other guy is some other guy, and they just put Army Hammer's face over the other one, and it's seamless. So anyway, shout out to The Irishman for being so long that I haven't watched it yet.
Same. I'm just like, I got a kid. I
I'll get to
ain't
it
trying to
eventually.
fucking dedicate 3.5 hours of what little free time I have to that movie. No offense to the movie, I just don't have the time.
Right? Same.
So, if we're talking about old people looking like they should be in the AARP, let's talk about what I previously called punching a 53-year-old man. So, if you had asked me at any time in the past year, like, I would give you $1 million if you took a punch in the face from a 53-year-old man. I'd be like, "Pff, of course. I will absolutely take a punch in the face from a 53-year-old man. I'll be fine. Then I saw a video of Mike Tyson sparring at the age of 53, and it was legitimately one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Yeah, I mean the guy. I think it's like Michael Jordan. It's like he's always gonna have his jump shot, and Mike Tyson's always gonna have a right hook. It's like these things that are so wired into this person who is built for that task that it's never gonna go away.
Right, and I think what's nuts to me about it though is it's not just the punch, like his movement, like he's ducking, dipping left or right so fast for a man at 53 years old. I think he could legitimately, and this is gonna sound ridiculous because it's the same logic as the Bucks. I don't know if you remember a while ago when Yao Ming was coming down. I think like he was starting to get injured and get out of the league. There was a
Uh,
guy called like, oh boy, I'm going to butcher the fuck out of this name. It was like God, Jin Lin. That's wrong. That's not how you say it. Promise. But he was like a 7 foot dude out of China. But all the
mhm.
film they had on him was like him doing post moves on like a tall wooden chair, and the moves looked great. So everyone was like, "Oh my god, he's gonna be amazing." And he came to the league and sucked because the thing is it's very easy to juke the shit out of a chair. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? So like I'm gonna say this, but I think Mike Tyson, if he wasn't 53 years old but in the same shape, I think he could legitimately contend for a title. Because the only thing that keeps me from saying he could do it now is that like I don't know at the age of 53 if you can take those kind of punches anymore. You know what I mean? Like at a
and
certain point, it's just
and you
like
can't
you can't take a punch anymore.
right, and you can't say that because that is the screenwriters of the film Rocky Balboa from 2006 will sue you because that is literally the plot of Rocky Balboa.
It
Rocky comes
is. You're
back,
right.
fights the world heavyweight champion.
who
I
is
don't think he
who
beats
was
him.
acted by an actual world champion boxer.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think I don't know if he beats. I think he loses. I think Rocky loses again. So that's I think I think Rocky's pretty much 500 over his film career. But no, but so he beats. No, he goes like toe to toe with this guy, and I mean Rocky Stallone. I don't think he was 54. He might have been like 60 or something when that movie came out.
I think they did. All right, it's unrealistic that he would fight the world champion first of all. But I will say the logic behind the movie was pretty good, which is that Rocky breaks his hand in the like early rounds, first second rounds, and from watching enough boxing, from what I understand, the thing is if you break your hand, you basically can't use that hand for 2 or 3 rounds. But then by that point, it has numbed up so much that you can just start throwing it. So like I think that was like it was a decent logic where like of course Rocky can't win. You know what I mean? But like you're gonna give him a fighting chance. He's gonna break his hand, which is cool because he's old. And then like
Can't
he's
win, Rock. You can't win. He was 60 in that movie.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. So, but either way, I still think Mike Tyson is throwing those punches fast enough and hard enough. They sound like fucking thunder landing outside my door. There's zero chance I would take a punch from Mike Tyson for $1 million. Zero.
Zero. No, yeah, it's same. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, yep, no way. And speaking of another icon from the 90s who's still around and still making headlines, Nick Cage is going to be Joe Exotic. I know you're excited about this one.
Oh yeah.
I'm half excited because I like Nick Cage, but I know you're full excited because you like both Nick Cage and you like Tiger King, which I know we've discussed before. I was kind of like, like I can skip this one. I'm fine, but you liked it.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not any sort of highbrow. Like there, I every time I talk about this documentary, I preface it with like, look, I know this is gonna sound bad, but you need to watch this because again, as I said in I think episode 1, I love to see batshit insane people try to navigate the normal world. And Tiger King is another level of insanity because those people are real. They live among us. And there are so many of them and this is only about 3 or 4 of them.
Mhm.
And so Nick Cage
Including the
playing
main crazy one, the main loony.
which that's the thing is the main loony is a psycho if we're talking about Joe Exotic, but the person that like has lost touch with the reality the most is 100% this guy in South Carolina at Myrtle Beach. He calls himself Bhagavan, which apparently means touched by God. The dude has a harem of like 4 women. He has lost his mind. That dude is so out of control. And I love, if you watch it, dude, the first time in the first episode, you're going to see the directors meet him, right?
Mhm.
And they're the ones editing everything. And they're like, hey, and he's like, well, hold on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around the back. You come to the front. I'll open it up like MTV Cribs, blah, 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 and we'll do that. And he walks away. And the directors look at each other and they're like, I guess you're just going to direct this thing for us, huh? And like, they left that in the fucking documentary, which made me so happy. Like, I'm so happy they made him look like such an asshole because he is.
I mean, it sounds like like when as you were explaining who he was, I was like Jared Leto. Get Jared Leto on this. Like put Jared
Yo,
Leto in the role of this crazy person. He's gonna like
yo, he has a
do the
long soul
method
patch
thing.
and a ponytail. It
Yep,
would work
Jared Leto.
so well.
With a God complex, Jared Leto.
I
But yeah,
always get Jared Leto confused. I don't know why. I get him confused with the dude who plays the main nemesis in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Jason Schwartzman.
Yes, I don't feel like they're anything alike, but for some reason in my head, I'm always like, yeah, that's Jared Leto and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And the answer is no, it's not. It's not even close.
It's like this weird, like sort of skinny, like nerdy energy. Like it's the same energy Jared Leto has in um, Fight Club. You know, just kind of like
I forgot he was in Fight Club.
yeah, he's the guy with the blonde hair who gets the
Yeah.
shit beat out of him.
Sorry. So yeah, going back to Nick Cage though, which was your
Uh-huh.
original point, is that like Nick Cage can wear any mask. You know what I mean? Like acting wise, he can
Yeah.
wear any mask. I've seen him be action hero, which is
Uh-huh.
wild. I've seen him play, and I guess it's a comedy, Raising Arizona, and like I've seen him play in like B level movies, and now he's gonna be Joe Exotic, a crazy person who owns tigers, which is just redundant. I feel like you have to be crazy to own tigers. I don't need to say it twice, but a crazy
I mean, well,
person that owns tigers.
Nick Cage is his own crazy person. He like the stuff he did with the money from his '90s is insane. Like I can't remember off the top of my head what he bought, but I know that he named his son Kal El.
Bro,
He
what
named his
is
son
with
Kal-El,
these
or
people?
he named his son Jor-El. One of those two. He either Superman or Superman's dad. He named him one of them two.
Stop naming your kids ridiculous shit for the sake of your children. Don't make them hate you.
Yeah, like let me see. Yeah, like Kal-El. Let me see. Nope, I can't find it. But he named it one of them too. But I personally like I like Nick Cage when not when he goes like full Nick Cage. I think that's like to sort of to paraphrase Robert Downey Jr. from Tropic Thunder, you don't go full Nick Cage. Like you don't. If you go full Nick Cage, it disconnects people, and people will just kind of go, "Oh, this is kind of weird." If you like are able to hone it, like they did in the mid '90s, like Michael Bay did in The Rock, where you have like little flashes of it. Even Face Off, you have little flashes of Nick Cage. What's another good performance? National Treasure. I mean, National people love
Right.
National Treasure. I mean, I shout out to the U.S. Social Studies structure where we watch National Treasure every year
Yeah.
as if it was like a history document.
Shout out to the North Carolina education system. Shout out
Exactly.
to you.
Shout out to let's keep showing that one. But I mean, it's a great performance, and it's people watch the movie all the time, and I think the reason it sticks is because he has a good performance in that there's like little flashes where he kind of you see like oh there's like a little bit of Nicolas Cage. Did you ever see Matchstick Men, where he played a con artist with Sam Rockwell?
I didn't, but that sounds perfect.
So he's a con man, but he has I think Tourette's and so you can imagine what he does with that. But he has he has like tics, and so you can kind of go okay, I know what he's gonna do here. But even then, it's like that one that's like the most you can handle before it kind of goes into like full like what was the movie with the Wicker Man with the bees or why did it burn? If you aren't able to control it, it just goes overboard. And instead of being like good schlocky, like I was how I was talking about Deep Blue Sea last week, about how it's it works because it's like schlocky, but it's not too schlocky, so there's like still some weight to it, but it's fun. That's what you have to do with Nicolas Cage, because if you go too much, people disconnect from it, but if you don't, it works out really well.
See, but what's perfect, I think, for the Joe Exotic thing is I think the whole situation naturally leads you to disconnect. I don't think a normal person can connect to someone owning and running a tiger facility.
Then in that case, then if that's the case, then maybe like, well, it's something that it makes you think about how like some things maybe just aren't meant for certain story formats, if that makes any sense.
Right,
Like, so a documentary, you look at it and you go, ew, and you kind of learn from real life things. But
right,
a dramatized story, you kind of have to read it and care about it if you're gonna follow it at all, you know?
right. I think this, I don't know that this will work. First of all, because it's a series, I don't think it's a movie, right? Um,
Yeah, it's a Netflix series. Yeah,
the Nick Cage one, right? It's going to be a
yeah,
adapted series.
yeah.
So I think it might work for it because it's a series, and I think the other thing that might work for it is that it has permeated. Most people know about it. You know what I mean? So like,
Right.
as much as it's hard to like connect to it, I think because everyone knows it's based, and I don't know how much. I don't know if it's going to be loosely based or like directly based because it'll work either way.
Yeah.
Directly based on something that happened. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like, I wonder even if you would naturally disconnect for it, this is somewhat real, and so you still buy in.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't think it'll work. I think it's just such a weird idea to take a documentary and turn it into a show.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like if people watch it, like I don't think there's gonna be a single person who is going to watch the Nick Cage series who hasn't already seen the Tiger King documentary. Like like me,
Right.
like I probably wouldn't watch it because I'm like I didn't want to watch the documentary. I don't want to watch the drama. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how people react to it, how people want to like what they want to get from it. Because what would you like honestly like what do you think a drama series would give you that the documentary doesn't already give you?
There can't be anything.
Right.
Like I would argue budget for like, some of the higher. I don't know. I mean, it's fucking tigers. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you need a high budget to do that. But he already had the tigers.
Right.
The tigers.
Exactly. So
So I don't
like
know.
the
I
only
think I'm
thing.
just gonna get to see. I think what it's gonna be is I'm going to watch like 20 minutes of the first episode just to see Nick Cage be
Dude, the joke about it.
yeah, do him. I'll just like see the casting and see each person do each character, and then be like, I'm good.
Yeah.
This is all I wanted.
Right, yeah, because like I was saying, like so the only thing like in a normal movie, like if you wanted to see a dramatization of like a music documentary, like let's say that they do a documentary on, I don't know, who's like a rock like if they had done a documentary about Queen, the band Queen, right?
Right,
You're gonna want to see Bohemian Rhapsody because you want to see the story played out in real life. You want to see like sort of the behind the scenes. You want to see what Freddie Mercury was thinking. But for you to watch Bohemian Rhapsody, you watch it and you care about him as a like a character like on the show.
right,
Me watching the Joe Exotic show, I don't know if I would want to watch it and be like, I want to care about what happens to Joe Exotic because they're all psychopaths and sociopaths. So like, why? You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
what the drama would give me is not something that I would want because of who it's going to be about.
Right. I think the reason like I said, I think the reason it works in a documentary format is because this is telling you that this thing that is absurd on the highest scale is real. You know what I mean? And like a drama doesn't bring that same feeling across. You know what I mean? Like you
Right.
watch the documentary and you're like, if I had told you like, there's this guy who owns tigers and like hires convicts for all of his workers because they can't get work anywhere else, and one day one of them gets their arm ripped off by a tiger, and the owner just walks up to the crowd like, hey, just want to let you know someone got their arm ripped off by a tiger. I'll give you a rain check. Just come back next week. You'd be like, that's insane, and there's no way that's real. But the documentary gives you that. Whereas if I told you that and then showed you a drama, you're gonna be like, this is still just made up.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
and
So
I
you're
mean, I
not
guess
gonna
it'd be cool.
connect.
And they're gonna show the scene of the guy getting his arm cut off, but it's like, well, then,
I
like,
hope it's so over the top, like fucking Evil Dead, bro. I hope the tiger rips it off, and he's like just blood gushing, dude.
oh, actually, you know what? You know, the only way that this movie would be interesting to me would be if we get scenes of the movie from the perspective of the tiger.
Oh my god, you're right, bro. Tiger King is about the tiger who is king of the zoo. That's what it's
Tiger,
about.
Tiger King, colon, that tiger went tiger.
I got tiger's blood, straight from Charlie Sheen's mouth. Um, that's I remember there being an old PC game forever ago where you played as a deer hunting people, and it would just be a real life version of that game.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. Like,
Get the Jaws point of view is like.
Josh point of view. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the reason I thought about it is because in the Evil Dead, there's these shots from outside the cabin where like the spirit is like going through the woods really
Oh
low to the
yeah,
ground. And I just imagine that as like the tiger going low, and then Joe Exotic's experiencing bullshit or something, and then he just like jumps on him or whatever. When he attacks him and pulls him by his leg.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, the honest. Well, I mean, I'm always down for a Nick Cage performance that's kind of a little out there if it's properly out there. But another thing that makes me excited for this is that I think it's being uh, shaped or developed by the guy who did American Vandal on Netflix. Did you ever see that show? It was
Yes,
actually
I
one
watched
of
both seasons.
about both seasons. Okay, great, great. I love that show, and it's very hard for me to recommend. Or no, it's really I recommend the show to people all the time, but it always has this sort of barrier to entry because you try to explain to them that it's this. It's a
It's a
spoof
crime
of the
doc about
documentary.
dicks.
Right, right, right. But yeah, and it's about dicks, and then season two is about poo. So like,
But
you
it's
have to.
done so well.
It's done so well. It's such a great send up, especially if you love crime documentaries, because it sort of follows everything the same. The recreations with computer animated, except the things that are being animated are like dick drawings, and y- you have to go into it knowing, the recreations like those where everybody's in the shadows, but then in these it's like somebody pooping into a bag and stuff. So, but as a whole, I think it says some very important things about technology and about um, how we are connected through social media on a much more subtle in a much more subtle way, or a much more how can I say, like deft hand than something like Black Mirror, which I think is much more heavy-handed. But they're so good, but they have this barrier to entry because of what they are about, or on the surface level, what they're about. Dick drawings and a turd burglar.
Right. I
But
remember trying to get a friend to watch it, and I was like, look. He was like, "What's it about?" I was like, "Look, it's about a guy who spray painted a dick on a teacher's car." And he was like,
yeah,
"What?" And I was
yeah,
like, "Just you just have to trust me on this. It's done. It is like the best possible version of a satire for
right,
that
yes,
that
yes,
that
yes, and, and it and
genre."
it has something to say at the end of both of them. And I'm sad that they canceled it, but I'm glad he's on it. And I think if this is done correctly, it could be something closer to Wolf of Wall Street rather than something that just recreates like a shot for shot or like a storyline for storyline recreation of the documentary.
Right.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
But I binge the fuck out of that. Yeah, unrelated. Just I'm doing a callback. I saw a scene from a Nick Cage movie, and I don't know what the fuck was going on. I don't know what movie it is. You might be able to call it out, but he's in a car with three black dudes. One of them being, I want to say, Exhibit,
Oh,
and
is it Protocol New Orleans or
I
Dirty
don't.
Bad Lieutenant?
It might be. I don't know. All of a sudden, he's just like, "Give me the money," and Exhibit's like, "Play it cool, man. I get the money." He's like, he just starts yelling, "Sup!" He's like, "Sup, sup!" like just like waving the gun around, just saying "sup," and like freaking out. And I was like, "This is the most Nick Cage shit I've ever seen in my life.
I
Nobody
think.
else could do this in a movie." I don't even know if he pulled it off because I only saw the clip. Like
Mhm.
I don't know if you do anything but laugh at it, but he's the only person that would be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think that is Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans. Um, I I think that's the movie where there's a guy who they kill or something, and then Nick Cage is high on drugs, and he tells the guy who shot the other guy like, "Hey, shoot him again," And he goes, "Why?" And he goes, "Because his soul is still dancing." Look that scene up. I think that scene's definitely from Protocol. I think yours is too. I think Exhibit is in that movie. But I haven't seen the movie, but those clips make me kind of want to watch it.
Right? Like I
Yeah.
just that seems like full Nick Cage.
Right, right. Um, Speaking of binging, you said you binged another show recently, right?
Yeah, yeah. I binged through Tiger King, and then, um, well, I don't think I started anything for a little bit, but I recently started Dave, which is
Hmm.
the show about Little Dicky based loosely on his life, I believe, and it is really good. Apparently, it's the highest rated show on FX.
That's kind of crazy.
Because
I feel
Always
the
Sunny
show.
was on FX. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
believe this got rated higher than that. And then I watched it. I was hesitant to because I don't really care for Little Dicky that much. Like I've
I'm the
heard some of
same.
his music, and
Yeah,
it's like some of it's okay, but like I just couldn't get into it. And then I had a friend recommend it. He's like, "No, it's really good." And so
yeah,
I binged the shit out of that. I think I'm like one episode away from finishing it, but I
yeah.
knocked that out quick.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm this. I feel the same about Lil Dicky. I don't have much exposure to his music either, but I've heard similar things, and um, I usually have this sort of anecdotal way of sort of reading if something's popular, like if people like it, like just kind of go like, all right, is it in people's like Instagram stories? Is it in their Snapchat? Are they tweeting about it? And Dave is one that has popped up on like a lot of Instagram stories from my friends where like they'll be like, "Why finishing Dave?" And it's people who I kind of go, "Really? Like that like that's the show that you're gonna watch?" I mean, okay. And so, but I've seen it a lot more than other shows, so I'm excited to start it. I'm excited to watch it, and I heard they got a season two. Um,
That's cool. I didn't know that, but that makes sense. I mean, I don't think you can have the highest rated show on your network and not re up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the show. Like you said, they had Always Sunny. I'm trying to think of other comedies. They had Baskets, which won a few Emmys. They had Atlanta, which is
Oh
huge.
yeah, Atlanta's huge. That's
So
probably what I'm gonna binge next.
yeah.
So you're gonna binge Dave, right? You're gonna just watch all of it in like a 3 day span, right?
No. So I don't really binge shows. I know I'm like, I consume a lot of pop culture, but binging shows is just something that I don't really do for some reason. There is a reason. I just don't like inhaling something so quickly just to be done with it, just to say I finished it. Which is why I've never been a big fan of Netflix's sort
Dropping
of
everything all at once.
dropping everything all at once. I like my weekly HBO shows. So I can. So the reason I do that, and that I've always done that, is because I like watching a show, thinking about it, taking it in, being like, okay, reading about the episode, thinking about what it means for the show as a whole, thinking about where it's going next week, and sort of just digesting it so that it sort of calcifies in my mind as a singular episode, and then next week doing the same. I used to watch when I watched The Wire for the first time ever over the course of a summer when I was in school. Like I literally like summer let out for the or school let out for the summer, and I started the show, and I literally did one episode a day until the new semester started, and it fit perfectly. But then, that allowed me to sort of think about the season as a whole and remember it, without it sort of getting lost in this rush of 3 days. You know,
Right. I think I'm the opposite. I binge everything, and I think it's more of a lack of self control than anything else. I finish an episode, and the very first thought in my head, if the show's any good, is like, boy, can't wait for that next one. And then it pops up and it's like, hey, you want to watch the next one? I'm like, sure fucking do. Didn't have anything else I was planning on doing. So
okay.
then I watch it. And
Mhm.
it also, I don't know, which came first, chicken or the egg, but I've
Mm,
also mentioned that I don't think about shows or movies really on a meta level ever. Like I don't think about what happens outside of the movie. Like I'm purely in it in the present of that story. You know what I mean? Like I'm not thinking ahead generally. I'm not trying to figure out how to place this within something else, or I'm not thinking about themes. I'm not thinking about messages trying to be put across. I'm just in the
Mm.
movie in the moment. And so I wonder if that plays into me binging stuff, or me binging stuff is the reason why I don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it could be either one. I mean, for me, I mean, it's one of the reasons I do it, just so I can think about it and be like, oh, like I can't believe he did that, and sort of whatever themes or ideas are brought up in that show, I want to see how they fit as a whole. Um,
The one show I did not binge simply because I saw it as it came out and immediately was like, I'm keeping up with this. You can't stop me. Is Breaking Bad. I definitely
mhm,
watch that
mhm,
week to week, and that is also the show that I've probably thought about most in terms of like what's going on, what does it mean, how are we supposed to view certain characters. But the other thing is that I also get most of that information from other people more suited to doing these kinds of analysis.
yeah,
I can't pull it together for myself because I'm so just in it at the moment that like
mhm,
it's hard for me to find themes. And I've had a problem with that even in school. Like I remember I was going to college to be an English teacher before I dropped out, and I remember even in English like they'd be like, "What are some of the themes and messages this author is trying to get across in this thing?" And my thought was always like, "You don't fucking know. There's so much shit we could just be attributing on our own that the director didn't mean." And I've seen that happen in rap songs. I've seen people ask rappers about lyrics, like, "Oh, is this what it meant?" And they were like, "Nah, that's cool though, but no, that's not what I meant when I did
yeah,
it." And so
right.
I wonder how often that's happening to shows or movies or books or anything. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
wonder if sometimes we give a little too much credit.
a little too much. Yeah, yeah. Like wow, like this means that. Like what I always think about when I always uh picture about people over analyzing certain rap lyrics, I always think back to the Kanye West song where he talks about he keeps it Roman, he keeps it 300. Do you remember that?
Uh, no, that's Black Skinheads, right?
Yes, yeah. And so yeah, yeah, yeah. And so he says, I keep it Roman, I keep it 300. I mean, he's just saying that because in his mind, like it just conflates the movie 300 with Greeks, and it's like that same kind of sandal sort of Spartan warrior
Right.
mentality, right?
He's like, Troy, Greek, Romans, fuck it, let's
Right.
go.
And I remember seeing on, I think it was Genius or somebody somewhere else where he goes, I keep it Roman, I keep it 300. And somebody was like, he means he keeps it 300 because in the Roman numerals, 100 is a C. And if you put three C's, it's calm, cool, and collected. And he's
Get
saying it's
the
calm, cool,
fuck
and
out of
collected.
here.
I'm like, no, it's like when he says on another song with Tyler Creator, he's like, I'm Tom Brady if Marshawn is throwing to me. No, he's just putting shit together that sounds cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't make like Marshawn if Tom Brady's throwing to me like what like wait what just because they won the Super Bowl together like there's nothing more to it sometimes than what it
Right.
is.
He made
But
a link in his head that has nothing to do with anything and just went with it, and you're looking too far into it.
yes,
My
yeah,
favorite version of that is fucking like people do that. I think to Jay Z a lot, and I think Jay Z's super talented and does mean it a lot. But what's funny is I think he got in his own head because he has a line. I referenced it earlier, like an episode or two ago, where I was like, where he says triple entendre. Don't even ask me how. Um, and the thing is the line he's calling a triple entendre before it is not even a fucking double entendre. It's just a fucking
a tundra
he just
and
used
untundra.
homophones. You know what I mean? I think that's what they're called, right? When two like two different words sound the same. Like he just put that
Homonym
in homonym. That's what it is.
or homonym or homophone. It's one of those.
Yeah, either way, like he just used one of those, and it's like that's not a triple entendre. You got in your head, you were feeling yourself a little bit, and you missed it. You fucking missed it. It's like
Yeah,
I wonder if we do that to things too much, and I personally do not do that. All I do is I'm just fucking watching.
a triple entendre that he does that I actually do like a lot is in So Appalled by Kanye West where he says so fucking fly. I'm not, or I'm so fly. So fly. I'm fucking not playing,
Yeah,
which is great because it's like plane, like PLAIN, like plane. He's also so fly that he's playing like a plane, and he's also not playing. I'm like, oh, the levels.
Right, exactly. You doing that fucking the GIF I always see with the dude where he's doing his the hand and the fireworks going off behind him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, real hip hop. Let it fly. He's not fucking not playing. Oh my god.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, and I don't know. I mean, some people like it's not. I don't want to say like you have no self control because sometimes people just if they want to watch it, they want to watch it. I like to sort of go, okay, I watched one, I'm excited for the next one tomorrow. So for example, earlier in this quarantine, I was watching the show Sharp Objects. It came on HBO. Do you remember that one? It's with Amy Adams. And I think it's just her, and it's based on a short. It's based on a book by Gillian Flynn. It's a short series, 8 episodes, and so episode 7 ends on a cliffhanger. And I remember I was watching it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so exciting! I can't wait to watch the next episode tomorrow." It was readily available. It was right there. I could have just pushed play, but I literally said I stood up from the couch and I was like, "I can't wait to watch that tomorrow. Oh god, I can't wait to see how it wraps up
please tell
in
me you're watching
24
it
hours."
with someone else.
Oh, like the show?
No, like was somebody else watching the show with you?
Oh no no no
Because
no
that'd have
no!
been so amazing for you to be like, I can't wait to watch that tomorrow. And they're like, tomorrow? Like, excuse me? It's
What's that?
here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was literally there. I mean, the show ended like a year or two ago. And so right now, Avatar was recently put on, Avatar: The Last Airbender was recently put on Netflix. And so for that, I'm doing 2 episodes a day.
That's fair, because that's what, probably like a 20 something minute episode?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's.
So
So,
two of those.
you want to talk about fucking no self control, bro? I watched Dragon Ball Z. I downloaded all of it. You know how fucking long that thing is. And I did not watch the abridged version. I watched the real fucking thing.
Some people say that they're still screaming.
I made it from like the first episode to the end of like the first or second saga in like a day and a half. I have zero self control. I had nothing else. It was over the summer. I had nothing else to do. I was like, cool, this is all I'm doing. I'm just watching this shit.
Hey, yeah, I love Dragon Ball Z, but I don't think I could ever rewatch it. Or I mean,
It's
like I used
not great.
to love it when I was a kid, but I loved it when I was a kid, and you love the idea of it, but now I'm like,
It has its moments where it's like super lit, but there's too much downtime. And also, I immediately wanted to turn it off because the very early on in the show, I wanted to say the first episode, but it can't have been that early. But very early, like Goku just leaves Gohan out in the fucking wilderness, and Piccolo's watching him, but Piccolo wants him to toughen up, so he's kind of just watching from a distance. And it's like 4 straight episodes of toddler Gohan whining and crying like a small child, and I just couldn't deal with it. I was like, I'm going to turn this off 4 episodes in because this shit is way over the top.
no, yeah. You couldn't pay me to rewatch Dragon Ball Z these days. Anything short of like the the YouTube recap ones.
Right. Yeah. It's a little odd. It's a tough watch.
Yeah. Speaking of, you were talking about binging, and I was talking about finishing up quarantine stuff. I recently watched Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is the third one. And I feel like every time I get on one of these episodes, I'm like, hey, here's another movie from the '90s that everybody's kind of forgotten. Let's talk about it. Um, but it's the second sequel, the third movie. It's Bruce Willis is back. It came out 7 years after the first one, 1995. So it's what is that, 25 years ago? 25 years ago this year.
Holy
And
shit.
it stars Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson is his partner in this one, and they're trying to stop a bomb maker or somebody who's setting up bombs in New York. And so that's it. I mean, it's pretty much that. That's the setup. But what it got me thinking was best sequels, because I feel like Die Hard 3 is very close to Die Hard 1 in terms of quality. I think, Die Hard 1, people still watch it all the time. It's a classic. If I would say,
Christmas
Die Hard
movie.
1, it's a Christmas movie. Die Hard 1 is an A. It's an A movie, right?
Right.
Like a classic, like A movie. Like the letter, like the grade letter. Or letter grade, sorry.
Yeah. Also,
I
it's a
would say
classic ass movie. We'll go with it.
super, yeah. Die Hard 3, I would say, is right there. It's like an A minus or a B plus. So it's close, but it's not quite. But the fact that it's even close at all is kind of insane, considering how shitty sequels have been, how shitty sequels are now. And I think I have thoughts about why that works, which I can get into in a little bit. But what are your favorite sequels? Like, or what are some movies that you think are like the best sequels? And I mean, you can go like you can say like Godfather 2 or like The Dark Knight, but what are some that you think are great? Like maybe that people haven't thought of. If you have any off the top of your head.
All right, so here's the problem is I'm gonna start this by saying I don't rewatch movies. Um, for no reason other than I have some sort of fucking psychological problem where rewatching a movie to me is wasting time. I could be doing something else for the
Not
first
even one
time.
you like really liked, like not even
I
to.
almost not very, very, very rarely. Like I've watched Tombstone a lot, which is one of my favorite movies.
Uh-huh.
I definitely watch The Matrix a lot. Um, but like I just don't. Have watched Pulp Fiction maybe 3 or 4 times. I've watched Inglourious Bastards 3 or 4 times. Quentin Tarantino is probably my favorite director, but there's also a lot of movies I just haven't seen where I just, for whatever reason, haven't gotten to it. But with that being said, it's always hard for me to think back on, specific movies because when you don't rewatch movies hardly ever, like you watch them once and unless they're leaving a fucking grand impression, like it's very hard to remember things after one watch. But what I will say, if I had to label an amazing sequel, is that Matrix Reloaded is actually fucking amazing. The second Matrix movie is
Yeah,
amazing.
I like that one. I like that one for two things. So like in the middle, there's this long sequence from when they're in this restaurant to a freeway. That's like a long action scene. It's like 30 minutes.
With the two dudes with braids or dreads in the white
Yeah.
jackets,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah. The ghost
the
people.
yeah that is one of the best action sequences in any movie. Period.
I mean, even before that, even before that, Neo fights like werewolves and like other remnants of other matrices and matrices in like, this foyer, like this like hotel lobby with like weapons on the walls, and that one's great too. A lot of great fight scenes, like a good choreography in that one, and then it moves to that freeway chase scene, which is awesome. Um, but and another reason I like that is because or maybe I think it's impressive is that at the end, it goes, oh, this whole thing is bullshit. Like that you being the one is just like this has always happened. It was always going to happen. We built the one into the system to reboot it every time. There's been seven other you or ones. You're not the only one. So
Right.
I like that the movie just like at the end goes, wait, no, the first one it upends the first one in such a interesting way. But as a whole, I'm not I'm not like I like it and I like that middle action scene, but I think maybe I have to rewatch it just to see if it clicks, especially with the new one coming out in the future. But yeah, I
Yeah.
can see why that second one um is good.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my best sequels. I'm trying to think of other ones, and off the top of my head, again, I'm just so bad with sequels. Like, and we're talking compared to the first movie, right? Like, we're not talking in the middle because
Um,
I feel like you could say, like, for example, Thor Ragnarok. It's so infinitely better than the last
and
straight up Thor movie. You know
and
what I mean?
that's what I was gonna say about the thought that I have about why some sequels work, which is the only way that a sequel can work and stand on its own is if it separates itself in either theme or tone or genre from the previous ones, but keeps the characters.
Right.
And this works.
And Ragnarok
In,
definitely turns more into like, I mean, Thor as a character becomes infinitely more comedic.
right, yeah, it becomes it's funnier. It has this sort of quirky comedy tone that gets turned up, and the action is much brighter than the first one. So there, right there, you have a change in tone right off the bat.
Right.
Other sequels that work, Alien to Aliens. Alien is a horror movie, Aliens is an action movie, and that's why it works. I think anytime that there is a sequel and the sequel is different in some way, I think that's what makes it click. So, even sticking with the MCU, Captain America 1 is like a war movie, but Captain America 2 is like this thriller,
That's
like,
Winter Soldier, right? That was
yeah,
the
oh yeah,
one.
Winter Soldier, yeah, yeah. It's like this sleek spy thriller movie and that's the reason I think people remember that one.
Right.
And the reason that people don't go, "Hey, Ant-Man 2, hey man," like, they don't bring Ant-Man 2 quotes up all the time because Ant-Man 2, while I did like it when I watched it, it's the same type of feel and look and tone as the first one. It's just basically you just go Ant-Man and two movies are pressed into one. And as much as I love Far From Home, Spider-Man Far From Home, the second one that came out last year, it's pretty much the same tone and look and style and feel as Spider-Man 1
Yeah.
or Homecoming. And so I think ultimately, while people do like it now and they'll talk about it now, in 10, 15 years, I don't think it will be remembered maybe as well as other ones. Which is a testimony to how good Spider-Man 2, the first ones from like 15 years ago,
Right.
how good as a movie it is, because it's very similar to Spider-Man 1, but both of them are remembered pretty fondly. And Spider-Man 2, I think, is one of the best, to this day, one of the best comic book movies that have ever been made.
Yeah,
And
I think if you're gonna play it the same way, like if you're gonna play the sequel the same as the original, then you have to not falter at all in any aspect. You know what I mean? Like
or else
John
it's
Wick,
more of the same.
right? Like John Wick 2 is no different of a movie than the first John Wick, but because it is the exact same level of what you're expecting, you know what I mean? And it doesn't falter for a minute, that you're like
Right.
okay with it. You're not bummed out.
Right. Yes. Yes. Although, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I see exactly. And I'm not a big John Wick fan. Like, I liked it, and I kind of, I get it. I don't love it, which is weird because I love most pop culture things. Like, I kind of take everything and I go, yeah, this is awesome. But John Wick is just something that never clicked with me. But I do appreciate all three movies, and I think as a whole it'll be interesting to see if in 10 years if people are able to look back and say that's John Wick 2 or like that's John Wick 3, because you can't really separate them in a way that you can say, that's Alien, that's Aliens, same thing with Terminator, like that's Terminator 1, that's Terminator 2, and you can kind of go, those are two separate things that exist.
Right. I
Uh,
think what happens with those kind of situations is you just get iconic scenes in your head, and then you remember what movie they're from. You know what I mean? Like
right.
not you don't
And
separate the
I,
movies. It's just there are specific fight scenes or action set pieces that like work, and you remember that, and you remember that one's two, that one's
yeah.
three.
Yeah, but I do think that that sticks to like the change in tone or the change in look, because you'll go, that scene looks different. Like this action scene works because of this. And then in Alien 1, I like, people will go, in Alien 1, when the chest burster burst out of the guy's scene in the kitchen, that's like from that movie. But that's because that's the horror scene.
Right.
The reason that that's remembered is because it's the horror scene. And then people go, oh, the scene at the end where in Aliens, where she's beating up the queen in that mech suit, the get away from her, you bitch scene, that's more action, but then it's the change in tone splits the two, and then it ends up splitting the movies in your mind.
Right. Definitely, I could see that. For me, I know you said you weren't super into the John Wick movies, and this is unrelated to what we were talking about, but for me, the John Wick movies fill, boy, and this is kind of weird to say, fill a void of Western versions of martial arts films. You know what I mean? Like Ip Man, The Raid. I think it might be like District B13 is one. A
Yeah.
lot of movies like that where it's just like martial arts movies. I think John Wick is a distinctly Western version of those movies. I
Okay. Oh,
it's
okay.
a
So, like,
loose to me. It's always been
you
like
were saying Western, but both. So the classic, like, capital W Western version of that sort of story is the Western, is what you were saying,
well,
right?
I guess sorry, I meant Western as in like if we talk about
Like the East and
yeah
the
the
West, like the
East
Eastern version would be
yeah
Ip Man.
yeah
Oh, okay. But I was thinking about like your like the just like the normal Western, but ultimately the Western, like, like
like North
cowboy,
America
North America. That those movies are the Western version of, like you said, Ip Man and the Raid and stuff. So it
right,
ends up
and I
fitting.
love those movies. I will sit and watch any of the Raid movies, any of the Ip Man movies, any of those at any time, and I will. those I'll rewatch the shit out of, just because I'm a scumbag and love seeing people fight. I know it's an action movie, but like fighting to me is one of the most enjoyable things to watch. Whether it's boxing, UFC, action scenes in movies,
Yeah.
like hand to hand fighting, and while John Wick does have a lot of guns, which I think is what kind of pushes it, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
towards our audiences, it's still very close hand to hand. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
all raw, like physical.
yeah. I think the best stuff in the John Wick movies is the hand to hand stuff, like the knife stuff in the third one. Um, I'm trying to think of other memorable
Yeah, shouts out
scenes.
to Boban. Fucking
Oh,
Boban.
yeah, Boban with the book
Yeah, with
in
the
the
book,
library.
his giant ass hands. That is the largest human I think I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like that's the stuff that see like that scene, that's that memorable stuff. That's that stuff that clicks, not just endless headshots to faceless people.
Right.
You were talking about shit, what were you were saying something that I wanted to get into westerns and John Wick. Fuck, I forgot. Anyway, sorry.
It's all good. Um, was it anything to do with watching fights?
Oh, right. Yes. That's what it was. So, well, actually, two things that I just remembered right now. One is, um, like, I think fight scenes that work in movies operate a lot like music, um, or a dance. Um,
I can see
if
that.
if you watch, like when you get off of here, if you watch like the dojo scene, which we just talked about from The Matrix,
Right.
and you listen to the sound and you listen to sort of the moves that they make, it's a lot of like pitter patter. It's like
Right.
tap 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 tap. Like it's not just a barrage of sound and fury. It's like a very coordinated like escalation and de-escalation like you would in a song, and the mixing of the sounds and the fights to it. Same thing with a car chase. You know, it can't just be just like a barrage of blah, like which has been recent Michael Bay. A
Exactly.
car chase has like specific sounds and there's screeching and there's like pitches and explosions. A good example would be the chase scene with the 18 wheeler and the Joker in The Dark Knight. If you go watch that one after we get off, you'll notice the same things like in a fight scene. It's like a song, like a sound. It has to hit you in that same sort of primordial pitter patter sound more than just like an explosion of just like fights, right?
You know what is the most amazing thing is that I hadn't thought about this until you mentioned it. Like this whole idea we're talking about, where it all kind of goes to music. Unrelated. One of the things that like I remember learning about language is that like we have butchered the English language to such a degree over here in America, specifically because we've taken all the musicality and all of the rhythm out of speech. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you go to like Ireland, as much as people make fun of the accent, it's a very song like, you know what I mean? There is a rhythm, there's a melody to speaking that language. The
Right.
same thing you get in like, Spanish speaking countries, Italian, you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
all
I was
kind of
just
has
gonna
that.
say that. Yeah,
And
I think Mexican Spanish has that. Like specifically like Mexican Spanish has this very sing-songy, like up and down, like da, da, da,
and I
da,
wonder if
like
that's why those languages sound so appealing. You know what I mean? Like Spanish language is always the sexy language. You know what I mean? Like French is the language of love. You know what I mean? Like that music I think kind of pulls with it. And where I was going originally before I sidetracked myself is that a perfect example of the car chase thing is the difference between your generic action movie car chase and Baby Driver. Baby
I
Driver
was just gonna say that.
because
Yeah,
he literally puts the music in his ears and you hear the music the whole time the chase is happening, and
right.
that movie is the best. I haven't seen all the Fast and Furious movies. I definitely didn't watch the early ones where it was more about racing. Like I started watching them as they just became action set pieces. Um,
Right.
but like that to me is the best car action in a movie I've seen in a very long time, if period.
Yeah. Like I was just gonna mention Baby Driver. Is and there's that shootout that happens about halfway through that where the gunshots make like a beat Do you remember
Yep.
that one?
Yeah, I do.
And it sort of says the song, and that's like the most explicit version of what I was talking about. It's like sort of it makes the subconscious conscious. Like it sort of goes, no, this is what it is, and I'm
Right.
sure it was
Like, no, this
insanely
is
difficult.
definitely music you're hearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It makes it insanely. It makes it. I'm sure it was insanely difficult to put together to sort of structure. But it's like that. It's like that's sort of like the best ones sound like that. Like you were talking about car chase scenes, Mad Max, which was brought up this week.
oh yeah.
Um, it came out 5 years ago recently. Um,
Wait,
Same
what?
thing. You watch those. Fury Road.
Fury
Sorry.
Road came out 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Where has my
2015.
life gone? All right, shit.
And so if you same thing, if you watch the clips of that one, the way it's edited is so perfect. I mean, I'm not going to go into why Fury Road is a perfect movie. It just is in every single way. But if same thing, editing, like the gears, the shifting, the sound, everything is this perfect mix. It's not just cacophonous, which it absolutely could have been.
You know, a good
But
example of something that's missing rhythm in musicality to it is the action scenes in Marvel movies. For like, the action
yes,
scenes in Marvel movies are as good as they are purely on the level of spectacle, not because
right,
they're
yes,
actually good. You know what I mean? It's cool to see Captain America punch, somebody else and send them flying across the street. But if we go to the best fight scenes in any of the Marvel movies, in my opinion, it is Cap and what the fuck is his name? Sebastian
Thanos.
Stan.
Oh, Bucky, yes, and
Bucky.
Winter
Yeah,
Soldier
in
in the
the Winter
street.
Soldier in the street with the fucking dopest knife flip maneuver
Of the flip.
ever. And then also the one-on-one between Cap and Iron Man at the end of Civil War.
Right.
That
Yes.
and it's
Yes. Yes.
such an intimate, like, you hear each individual punch and it has a rhythm. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Whereas like when you get to, as cool as it was in Civil War, the first big fight where Spider-Man, Ant-Man, they're all running at each
Oh,
other,
and yes. Yeah.
that
And yeah.
is
And the
purely on
in the
spectacle.
airport.
But if you go back and watch it, it's fucking awful to watch. There's 1,000 cuts. You don't get any of there's no rhythm to it. It's just like fucking Cap hits someone with a shield, cut. Iron Man shoots someone with a blaster, cut. You know what I mean? Like there's no rhythm, and it
Yeah.
really
I mean,
suffers from it.
yeah. I mean, if you like other than like those, like what other ones are famous? The elevator fight in Winter Soldier. That one's good.
Yep.
What else? What else? There's the fight with Thor and Iron Man in the woods in Iron Man 1 that I think works really well.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, like that's it. Like you're right. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like I don't
All the
really
other
remember
ones
much.
just exist purely on like it's cool to see all these superheroes fight, right? Like that's the barrier, the floor. You know what I mean? Like we're just gonna make sure people want to see it and not really care if it's good. And I think that those suffer, which is wild to say that the Marvel movies suffer anywhere. But like now that you've mentioned it, you know what I mean? Those are things where you definitely don't get the rhythm, the musicality, everything that kind of makes it what it is, and you can actually notice.
Yeah, and also like I think like this is the last point I'll sort of talk about when talking about action movies. Um, I think the best action movies or the best action sequences work because not only are they good and not only because are there stakes and we care about the characters and they're in actual danger, which makes that's where the drama comes from. They also tell us something about the characters. The example I always bring
I
up
know what it is.
is Casino Royale.
Yep, where the dude slides underneath the railing,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah,
And
and yeah. So early on in the movie Casino Royale, with the first James Bond movie with Daniel Craig, he's following this bomb maker through this construction site in Madagascar, and he's chasing him. The guy, he's doing parkour, and so the guy will he'll jump through a tiny window and Daniel Craig will bust through it. He'll break through the window. He goes up this crane, and instead of climbing up the crane, James Bond just like extends like the crane lever thing or whatever. The guy jumps down like 2 stories on top of elevators. James Bond just breaks the hydraulics off of a crane and he like flies down. So you learn so much about how he reads problems, fixes problems on the fly so quickly, and you go, "Oh, this is who this guy is," just from his actions.
Right.
And I think that works
No
well.
frills, no horseshit.
No horseshit.
He is exactly. He's like, I'm just gonna run through. I'm just gonna bulldoze whatever you have in front of me.
Yeah, yeah. I think in one bit, the parkour guy jumps down and he lands perfectly, and then James Bond tries to do the exact same thing, falls, flies like into an HVAC unit, and just gets up and does that Bugs Bunny like the head shake, like the like he literally does that sound effect and keeps running. So yeah, I think the best action scenes do that, where you sort of go, oh, this person is reading it this way. This person is you get something from them, or about how they think about problems as they're doing the action. It's not just like, oh, they're doing this because it's because they're
Right. Cat threw a shield because that's what he does.
yeah. Exactly. Another one is good. Another good one is the early Die Hard, like the first Die Hard, where he's, you see him. You get who he is from what he does, not just in non-action scenes, but in action scenes, which I think it's insanely hard because as a director, you just want to go, oh, let's just put the big explosions here, but there's so much more to it.
Definitely, and I think that is what separates generic action scenes from well thought out and ones that. And the thing is, like, even if you don't catch it, like I would have never thought of that Casino Royale thing explicitly. You know what I mean? Like I would have never put that together. But I have to believe somewhere, the subtext did register. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like you still get that feeling from that James Bond. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like we're not pulling out the little fucking pen gadgets. You know what I mean? Like James Bond's just gonna punch you in the face.
Yeah, exactly. And you get this sort of it just clicks so well in such a subconscious level that your mind goes, oh, it just hits it, and you don't register. You don't think about it. It just hits that like lizard part of your brain that goes, oh, pattern. Like it just
Yeah.
um.
You know what's really? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, anytime that I think about, or I talk about sort of how stuff registers without us thinking about it, it reminds me of this tweet I saw where somebody goes, "Oh, bro, you say your brain's acting weird? Yeah, it's acting weird. It's just meat with electricity in it."
Holy shit!
I remember. Oh yeah.
I I was watching something and I can't remember who it was specifically, but it was a guy talking to a doctor, and he was like, like, have you ever thought like, so everyone is, well, I guess not everyone. People at some point, legitimately get to a point psychologically where they're like, oh, I'm in the fucking matrix. You know what I mean? Like there's always, like, I've definitely had that thought. Like, what if this is all a figment of my imagination? Specifically, I got it when I hit a tree going fucking 95 miles an hour with no seatbelt, and all I have is a scar on the back of my hand. Like, from that moment forward, I've definitely had the thought multiple times where I'm like, what if I'm dead and this is just some weird fucking like dying breath, fucking figment of my imagination running shit on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I heard a guy ask a doctor about that, and the doctor was like basically like, what if this is a simulation? And the doctor's like, it is a simulation. Your brain is literally in a meat puppet just telling you what it thinks is going on. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, holy shit, you're right. Like the brain doesn't have vision. You know what I mean? The brain gets electricity from your eyeballs. It's like, yeah, that's probably what it is. You know?
Yeah, like
and everyone's brain works the same.
It just like gets cattle prodded from your rest of your body. Going, this is like, this sucks, or like, oh, this is great, and then it's like all it's looking for is to get zapped in the right spot so that it releases the good chemical instead of the bad chemical.
Right.
But
yeah.
No, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah. Or maybe, like you said, maybe this is all a vision. Like you just crashed, and this is the 1 second that's being extended to an eternity, and you're about to shit yourself because you're about to die, and it's just extended to 70 years.
Right. Exactly. But like, there's no but it's, and basically the doctor was saying, like, first of all, it is already a simulation. It's your your fucking brain just telling you what it thinks is going on, and then on the other hand, like, it doesn't do any good to think about anything like that. So it's just like, you can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you'll never know.
It's just a bunch of chemical reactions being like, oh, I'm just a bunch of chemical reactions, and then it just goes, okay, and then one day it won't be chemical reactions, and that'll be it.
Yeah. What's really a shame is that we've had such amazing transitions from topic to topic this whole episode, and I don't have a transition for the what I think. Where are we at on time?
We're like a little bit above an hour, a little bit past an hour.
A little bit of past an hour. All right. So should we talk about the ESPN Top 74 real quick?
I completely forgot about that. Um, uh, we could save it. We could save it for next week. I feel like this is a good place to end on in terms of. I feel like going from like, "Hey, your brain is just a chunk of meat," to being like, "Anyway, back to the ESPN." We can save
All
it.
right. So we're gonna keep that streak alive. Good transitions. Fuck everything you heard in this conversation leading up to this bad transition. We're not worried about it.
Exactly, exactly. Just like, especially going, this you should be hearing this on a Thursday, going into a weekend. Don't think about it. Just have fun, relax. Everybody's going through a hard time, so yeah, just. You know what? Yeah, let's talk about the 74. The 74. We'll hit it real quick, just because I do want to leave people thinking about something that isn't as bleak as a
As your life is a simulation and you
yeah,
actually died years ago,
yeah. I was
that's
like,
probably not a bad idea.
yeah,
Um,
you and everybody you love are just meat chunks bashing on a rock in an empty vacuum of space that is so infinite and vast that your brain will literally melt the moment you realize how big everything is.
yeah, so let's avoid that. So no transition. Just going to talk about that NBA Top 74 that was it ESPN did or Sports Illustrated?
ESPN.
It was ESPN. So I looking at the top 10. I don't have it in front of me, but I just wrote down some notes, which is that first of all, shouts out to fucking ESPN for doing what nobody wants to do and putting Tim Duncan in his rightful fucking place. That man is, I think, sixth or seventh on the list, right?
Let me see. I have the list right here. I don't. Oh shit! This thing only goes down to number 11. Let me see.
Okay. Either so
He's
ahead
up
of
there.
he's definitely ahead of Kobe, definitely ahead of Shaq, and everyone's gonna be like Tim Duncan. Yes, the correct answer is yes. It
Yes,
is
and
Tim
he should
Duncan.
always. Anybody who tells you Kobe's better or he's more on he's higher up on the goat list than Tim Duncan, it's just a Kobe stand or they're delusional. Look, R.I.P. to Kobe. I loved Kobe
Yeah.
growing up. I think he's a great player, but to put him ahead of Tim Duncan, I just don't think is right.
People discount Paul Gasol so much to make Kobe's legacy work better.
Pau Gasol,
Paul
Andrew Bynum, who
Gasol,
was the second or
yes,
third best center in the league at the
bro.
time.
Again, Andrew Bynum. People act like he was a fucking bum, and all I can tell you is that that man fucked up his leg. I want to say he tore his like ACL and MCL or something. He definitely fucked up his knee
Mm,
horribly. And the 76ers, I want to say,
yep.
were like, I don't give a shit. I'm still going to spend all this money
That's
because
funny.
he's that good.
He's that good. I mean, he was, I think, by the time, so he was 18 in like 2005 or 2006, which means by the time that they won the championship, he was like 22 or 23. So, like, he had his whole career ahead of him. And, injuries did eventually derail him. But yes, like, we're not bashing Kobe, but I do think that Tim Duncan is better. And I think, and this is not me saying, like, oh, Tim Duncan did it alone. Yes, he had Tony Parker, he had Manu, and then at the end he had Kawhi. But, yeah,
But
I
that's the thing
think,
is that those people, so Tony Parker has never been a top three point guard in the league. You know what I mean?
right.
He's never been top three, and top five has been a stretch. You know what I mean? At certain points, Manu Ginobili, as good as he was consistently a contender for sixth man of the year. It's not like he was. You know what I mean?
Pau
Like
Gasol.
he's great. Don't get me wrong, but like he wasn't a superstar. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Kawhi Leonard being a superstar now, is not the same as Kawhi Leonard like 2 years in the league. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, and even that one, the Kawhi that won the Finals MVP, he was very good, but I don't think he was like he isn't where he is now. So I think,
Right.
yeah. Another thing on the list that sort of caught my eye was Giannis being so high. I think Giannis is the future. I think he's an amazing player. I do think he's the MVP for this season. If the season did end now, I think LeBron is second, but I do think Giannis wins his second. They have him at 27, which I think is so interesting because he is ahead of John Stockton, who also, didn't win the championship, but John Stockton is the all-time leader in
In
assists.
assists.
And
Right.
the man played 18 seasons.
Right.
He's ahead of Allen Iverson, who also just won MVP,
That seems
no finals.
nuts.
He's ahead of Steve Nash, 2 MVPs. He's ahead of Isaiah
Holy
Thomas,
shit.
who
Yeah.
I think after watching The Last Dance, I actually think he's better than what this list has. I think he's kind of forgotten a little bit. I think people hating him does hurt his reputation a little bit, but you know he was Finals MVP. He's got 2 rings, and to go down or to win those rings, he had to go through Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan.
Right.
And
He was definitely no fucking slouch,
no,
and he was the dude on
he was
that
the
team.
dude, and he was very good. Like
As much as Michael Jordan was the dude on the Bulls, he still had Scottie Pippen, who, even in the documentary, they mentioned that like Scottie Pippen was also a top 5 player in the league for a certain amount of time,
right,
and then he had Dennis Rodman, who is
the greatest rebounder of all time,
the greatest
potentially
rebounder and one of the
defender of all time. Yeah.
right. So it's like as much as Michael Jordan was obviously the greatest, like he still had stars on his team. Fucking Isaiah Thomas, second best player was Joe Dumars, who, no offense to Joe Dumars, is not a superstar.
Right.
He's a good he's a good player.
But those were the 2 biggest ones. Isaiah Thomas being sort of relatively low, and yeah, Giannis being surprisingly high. I think eventually, I honestly do think he will be that high by the time it's all said and done. I
But
just
you're crowning it a little too early.
I do think, but just because of um, it's still too early. Yeah.
Right. If he, if it's all said and done, and he fucking stays in Milwaukee and never wins anything, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna look back on that list and be like, "Whew, that was a little,
that was a little premature.
early."
A little premature. I mean, he's ahead of Russell Westbrook, and Russell Westbrook. They both have the same number of MVPs, and Russell
Right.
Westbrook has that. I think they were in the conference. He's been to more conference championships. He was in the conference championship in I think 15 with the Warriors, and then I think he was also in the one in 12 when they went to the finals. So
Right.
it's yeah. I mean that to be. I mean I think ultimately Westbrook and Giannis will be around the same in terms when it's all said and done. But to be 15 spots ahead of him,
Right.
and Westbrook came into the league in '08, Giannis in 13. So that's 5 years of extra stuff that I don't know. I don't think I can. I don't think I
Right.
can give
It
him that
just
one.
it's too premature.
Right. All right.
The
So, go ahead.
the only other things I wanted to hit on this list are one, Charles Barkley is pretty high on that list. I don't remember exactly where he's at, and he doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Because of the ring
Um,
stuff, yeah.
yeah, no rings, and then also just like who he is now. But that man, my most favorite clip of him as a player is I don't know the game. You know what I mean? I've just seen it in a highlight multiple times. Is that a dude goes to shoot a 3-pointer and he closes out on the 3-point shooter, jumps to block it, gets high enough that he grabs it out of the air and curls it under his arm with one hand. Like, you know how freakishly athletic you have to be to close out on a 3-point shooter and just fucking
I just
snatch
block
it?
like grab it.
Yeah,
I think,
snatch
I
it.
would do that from a guy like putting
Near the
up a layup.
backboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree completely.
And so he never gets the props he deserves. I mean, even they talk about in the Last Dance briefly, which is that like Charles Barkley was legitimately a problem. And when they talk about that exhibition game, which we'll get into probably more next week, Charles Barkley was possibly the second best player on that court at that time. And Charles Barkley even says like up until I saw Michael Jordan in the Olympics, I was 100% sure that there was nobody in the league that was better than me at basketball. And that all changed. But anyways, definitely never gets his props. I'm glad I think he's ranked pretty high.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then the other thing I just wanted to touch on very briefly is that Hakeem Olajuwon is ranked 12th. And my favorite thing about Hakeem Olajuwon is that Hakeem Olajuwon was drafted the same year Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan went third. Number 2 was Sam Bowie. I was about to say Dave Bowie because I'm an idiot. And number 1 was Hakeem Olajuwon. And the greatest testament to Hakeem Olajuwon, to how good he was, is that Portland is forever mocked for choosing Sam Bowie, despite Sam Bowie very possibly could have been a great player if he never got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody says shit to the fucking Rockets for picking up Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah,
they're like, "Nah, you made the right choice. That was the one."
Okay, it wasn't the GOAT, but you got 2 rings out of it. You got it. The greatest, one of the greatest centers of all time. Yeah. What can you do?
No, you made the right choice. You know what I mean? Like nobody thought, because like they say in the documentary, people didn't think at the time you could have the scoring champion be your champ. You know what I mean? So
Right.
even with hindsight 2020, it's still like, no, that's fine.
Yeah,
That was a good pick.
it's like drafting Peyton Manning 1 and Tom Brady 3. It's like, yeah, it's not the GOAT, but he did pretty
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we can end this on this last one. I'm going to tell you. We can end it right after I tell you this exact fact. Russell Westbrook is number 42, and number 41 is none other than Bob Cousy.
I never know how to feel about that. It's so hard to like
The
throw
picture that you have
historical.
of this man, he is wearing Chuck All Stars on a basketball court for a professional basketball league.
Yeah, that man only could dribble with his right hand. Also,
Yes. Russell
I
Westbrook
watched
would
him
shatter
dribble.
every single bone in his legs into fine dust if he played Bob Cousy. Bob Cousy would be like fucking Lieutenant Dan after he played Russell Westbrook.
Oh yeah,
Bob
dude.
Cousy would be like those shots in movies where people are falling into quicksand and they're grasping for a vine. That would be Bob Cousy playing Russell Westbrook.
Bob Cousy playing Russell Westbrook would look like the fucking Saving Private Ryan.
He would look like fucking like the Terminator in Terminator 2 when he's frozen and he's taking a step, and every time he takes a step, a part of his legs break or gets stuck on like that. That is Bob Cousy if he played Russell Westbrook.
That is 100% true.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. All right, well, we're going to end it on that. That's straight up the truth. No argument there. So, it was good talking to you. Good. Glad we could get this out for anybody listening.
Yeah.
If you want to catch us, yeah. If you want to catch us on Twitter, Instagram, all that's on at Diff Animals Pod, and the email if you have any suggestions, comments, just want to be nice and tell us it's great. That's at differentanimalspodcast@gmail.com. You can catch me individually at tmoneybags MUNNY on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram don't have shit on it, but maybe one day it will.
And then,
What about you, Ever?
yeah, for me, you can find me on Instagram at evercastro92. And I also want to, I know, Tyler, you have the music, the guys who did the music for us, but I wanted to shout out Colin Cease for the podcast art, and you can find him on Instagram at creative.colin. That's Colin with 2 L's.
Yep, and the guys that did the music are Eddie Ruger was my contact. I believe Philly Fresh is the one that put the beat together. I'll have their information at the bottom of this list as well.
Okay, cool.
All right, guys. Catch you motherfuckers next week.
See you guys. Have a good week.
See you. Oh, and you know why Charles Barkley didn't have another ring?
Why?
Never got a ring? There's too many Urkels on this team. That's why his wins low.